going to be joined with Devi, the dog trainer, in about 30 seconds. And then we're going to go live on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. My name's Gina. I'm with Korean Canine Rescue, and thank you guys for joining us. So, Devi, have you invited yourself to IG Live?
Yeah, I think I put a request in.
Okay, let's see if I can get you. Send request.
Oh, haha. Am I up?
Here she comes.
I'm up.
Here she comes, Devi, and all her plants behind her.
Or a small portion of them.
Okay. Let's see where we are.
Let me make this screen a little bigger. There you go.
It's not connecting. Just bear with us, guys. Just give us another couple seconds. We're trying to connect.
Hope everyone's doing good.
Yeah. All right, Devi, let's try it again. Could you request
Why,
again?
thank you.
Okay, so let's try that again. Thank you guys for bearing with us. We're going to start very shortly.
Request again.
And have you accepted?
Have. Oh.
Ah, there she is.
Oh, let me turn that volume down. There you go. Okay, I thought I silenced it and then it just like kicked in.
Hey guys. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for being patient. Little technical glitches in the beginning, but we're here and we're on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram Live with Devi, the dog trainer, and she's currently hanging out with her plants in Brooklyn. And happy to have you here, Devi. Thank you for joining us today. I'm excited to finally be able to catch up with you. We've all had busy schedules, but we finally, are here. And it's been roughly a year since you started training for us. I wish I could have interviewed you sooner. Everything's been kind of crazy, I guess, just for everybody around the world.
It's a wild year.
Yeah. But I mean, I have definitely been paying attention to what you've been doing for our dogs, and it's been like absolutely wonderful. So we get great reviews from our adopters, and everybody's just really happy with their training sessions, and the dogs are happy. So let's talk. Let's catch up.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's get into this. I am like super nervous. So like if I am a little stumbly, I apologize to everyone. I'm like, I have sweaty palms.
Yeah, well, it's a good thing it's only 1 p.m. So, if everybody's taken a break from their lunch, please join in, tune in, send in your questions either on Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube. And we're going to be taking your questions at the end. Any dog training questions you want answered, any plant tips you want answered.
I'm better with the dog training questions than I am the plant tips, just FYI. So especially don't ask me about succulents. So
Uh-oh, no succulent questions. Okay,
no succulent
good.
Questions.
So what have you been doing lately? Tell us about, what it's been like working with our dogs over the past year.
It's been extremely rewarding. I've worked with a bunch of different rescues and shelters throughout my career, but I want to say working with Korean Canine has been probably the most rewarding experience. Just the adopters are extremely committed to seeing these dogs be rehabilitated. Everyone's so nice. You guys are backing the adopters, making sure the dogs are getting in the right homes. And I mean, that's all you can really ask for in an entire rescue situation is we're looking out for the dogs and the people. So I've made a lot of great friends too along the way. So I always consider a lot of my clients as friends as well. So that's it's been fun.
Yeah, I feel like, a lot of trainers say once they connect with a client, that's like their friend for life, and they basically, are training their dog for the rest of its life. Is that true for you?
That definitely is the case. I'll have clients from years back that'll just pop up on my Instagram like, hey, Devi, so my dog started doing this. What do you suggest? So I still have people reaching out, asking questions about their dog training, but especially to let me know how their dog is doing, which is great. I love to see the progress.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's the best part of seeing these dogs come in kind of like raw from Korea with no socialization and very little positive interactions with humans, and then you get them and you have to start from like square one. So it's been a fantastic journey just watching you come in and do the work that you've been doing. Are you originally from New York? Tell us about your background in dog training.
I'm originally an East Coaster, so
Okay,
I grew
that
up
counts.
I grew up in a town right outside of Philly called King of Prussia. If anybody knows, a lot of people are like, "Isn't that a mall?" Right?
It is a mall.
It's just a big mall. That's where I lived. But I was living in San Diego for about 4 years, and then moved to Indianapolis for about 7 years, and then came out to New York. So I just kind of like zigzagged back and forth in the country.
Yeah, it's
as
quite
far
a
as
zigzag.
yeah,
Yeah.
kind of all over the place. As far as the dog training goes, when I was going to school, thought I wanted to become a zoologist. So I started volunteering time at this local zoo nearby my hometown. And when I started working with the wolves, I got really into just learning more about canine ethology. That was just very fascinating, the whole pack mentality. And I kind of slowly branched out. And it wasn't until like 2007 I started really kind of getting into volunteering with shelters, learning from other trainers, kind of finding mentors and such to learn more about that. Honestly, I did not think about even doing dog training as a full-time career. It was always just a fun hobby for me to just learn about it until like 8 years ago. I was like, you can do this for a living? Like, I just do this for fun. So that's where I am now. I'm like, wow, okay. I've actually made a whole career out of it. And it's, I get to do what I love every day, and I love it.
Yeah. But, it's not that easy of just, saying, hey, I love dogs and I want to be a trainer. Like, it took you a long time to get where you're at, right? Like, you've been doing this for 10 years.
Yeah. I mean, I was a clueless dog owner at one point. So it's just kind of, I feel like all trainers started out that way. I wasn't born with a clicker and a leash in my hand. So there's definitely a big learning journey throughout that entire, decade, which kind of gives away my age a little bit, but
hey, I see. I think dog trainers can start when they're like, teenagers. So there you go.
There you
go. What do you think is different? A lot of people have this question. I kind of see it popping up right now in the feed is the challenges of training dogs in New York City. What do you think is different, or is there a difference between, like suburban living, say San Diego, compared to, the heart of Brooklyn or the heart of Midtown Manhattan?
There's a huge difference. Coming out here, when you have a dog that might be reactive towards people or bikes or whatever the trigger might be, I mean, it's very hard to not have them over threshold when you're out here. I mean, when you're working in the suburbs, if you have a dog who is, say, reactive to other dogs, if you come across a dog, you have a little bit more space to move away. When you're out in the city, that usually isn't an option. So you're really having to tap into doing a lot of defensive handling. Like, what do we do in the case that the dog is reacting? It's just, what is our emergency procedure to get out of that situation?
Yeah.
So you definitely have to get creative with how can I work on changing this dog's emotional response to particular fears and triggers and such without being unfair to them. We're trying our best to set them up in a situation that isn't flooding them, but sometimes it's unavoidable in the city.
Yes, definitely.
But I also, I see the difference too with when you're in the suburbs. I've seen city dogs that do fine in the city, and then they go to the suburbs, and then they become more reactive because they see a dog from a distance. Yeah, it's that
Right.
slow buildup, right? There's a dog that's coming down the sidewalk and it's slowly
Mhm.
coming closer and closer. I liken it to if you're walking around Times Square and you're surrounded by a ton of people, you can be inhibited by, oh my gosh, there's a lot of people, versus you're on a dark street and there's like one person in the distance. You're probably going to be a little bit more scared.
Yes. Yeah, you're right. Actually, a lot of our adopters have dogs in Midtown Manhattan or, in the city or Brooklyn, and then they have a home like upstate or in Long Island. And they do tell me that my dog, why is my dog stranger danger now? Like they never saw that kind of behavior in the city. And all of a sudden somebody will come to their door or they'll see another dog in the distance and it's like flip out totally.
Yeah. I mean, you hear every little noise when it's quiet, right? It's like if you ever taken a like a trip upstate. I know when I stayed upstate.
Hey,
Hi,
who's that?
this is Tyrael. He's like, Mom is nervous. I got to do the service dog thing. I know. Go lay down, please. Go lay down.
We
He's
just
like,
see a
you
big
sure
head
you
come
can?
in the
I
picture.
know. So sweet.
And the head is bigger than yours.
He's just a big oaf. But yeah, I mean, like when I was staying upstate New York, it was like it's so quiet. And you're like, what's that? Do you hear that? What is that noise? And then here you hear noises all the time, so it's not anything that is unusual.
Mm-hmm.
And this is something to tell you. You might hear squeaking in the background. I try to hide Tyrael's squeak toys because he knows when I'm on a call. So he likes to squeak his toys, and
He's
he
like,
just
let me
snuck,
be extra. It's
he
annoying
just
right now.
snuck his little pink bunny into his bed, so he might try to squeak it later.
That's cute.
But yeah.
Tyrael, your big lug of a guy. Let's talk about how he's adjusting to the city. He is 85 pounds.
Yeah,
Or
85 pounds.
that's like I would have 3 of my dogs don't even make that weight. Just all my dogs are under 20 pounds, but yeah, to have an 80-pound dog in the middle of Brooklyn, where you live probably in the busiest part of Brooklyn, what's that been like behaviorally? I mean, has it been challenging for him and you as well? And how have you had him come? And I assume you had him when you were in San Diego.
No, actually, I got him when I was in Indiana. So when we were living in Indianapolis, he's a Midwest dog. So the city was very different for him as well. And this is where I feel like I can relate to a lot of my clients, where I took a dog who never grew up in the city. He was 7 years old when we moved out here. He's 8 now, well, 8 going on 9 and such. And it was very overwhelming for him as well, where he'd come out just like stimuli out the ears. So there was that transition period where, him as my service dog, I did have to semi-retire him because I didn't want to be unfair and be like, hey, you have to work through all of this while we were building his confidence.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. As far as having a large dog in the city, one of the things I've really learned is because there's so many people are walking dogs back and forth, he is a very large dog. Oh, your banner.
Yeah. Okay, everybody can see that this is our office and it's stock full of files.
Surprise.
Continue.
So as far as him he's a large dog, he's a large black dog, and that tends to be a huge trigger for other dogs who might be reactive. So when you have a large dog, and even if your dog might not be reactive towards other dogs, I try to let other people know when I'm about to pass another dog, if that dog seems a little bit stiff or uncomfortable. I'm like, hey, I'm just gonna walk by you and just give them that heads up so he's not surprising them. And a lot of people who do own reactive dogs find that to be very helpful. They're like, thank you for giving me that heads up, because that is one of the harder things to work with.
Are you able to tell kind of like when you're approaching those kind of people, like that dog looks like he's going to flip out?
Yes. I definitely can see that look, like if the dog is just crouching down, that low stare, the licking of the lips, those different stress signals that you might see I'm like, I'm going to go ahead and put some space between me and the other dog just to be on the safe side. Even if the dog isn't reacting in that moment, it's better for even Tyrael, right? If he has half of the dogs reacting towards him, he's going to start getting a little bit unsure of dogs on the street.
Yeah, that it's and also you have like a Rottie, right? He's a purebred
Yeah,
Rottie. Yep.
yeah.
So he's not a desirable breed for most apartment buildings, about like
Right.
buildings in New York City. So you don't often see purebred Rotties in the city.
Well, surprisingly, because I live in Park Slope, surprisingly, there's a few in Park Slope, and I feel like we all kind of like give each other the head nod, like, "Hey, Roddy owner, what's
Yeah.
going on?"
But he is so adorable. Like his face is just so smushy. If I saw him walking down the street, I would just be like, wow, that's a really adorable Roddy. But most
I
people
feel
I
like I
can
get
see
one
would
way or the
probably
other.
cross the street.
Exactly. I get either like, "Oh, look at him," to like, picking up their children and scurrying across the street. So it's we get those.
Hide your babies. um, let's talk about your training style. I really love how you're into shaping behaviors, using mostly positive methods. And, our dogs do really well with positive only in the beginning. And
Mhm.
that's pretty much how we rehab our dogs at the office, is just using positive only methods.
Mhm.
But what if you have a fearful dog that is scared of the clicker, doesn't take treats, not food motivated? What kind of approach and method do you use to kind of, make that connection with the dog?
Normally, what I do with those situations are, and the reason why I do approach a lot of the times with doing mainly, we're just going to do a lot of relationship building
Mm-hmm.
before I put on a lot of pressure with them, because there are going to be times where I'm like, I have to put a little bit of pressure on you, because if I don't, you're just going to stay in your crate and never leave ever again. So I like to really tap into what is innate with the dog. They have instincts to help them self-soothe themselves. So if they're stressed, they stop, they sniff the ground, it helps them relax a little bit, or they do a shake off, self-grooming, those different things in those moments where they feel stressed help them come down from that. So there are a lot of times I'll use that to encourage them to do those particular behaviors to be able to calm themselves, to trying to word this in a way.
Relax.
Like,
Yeah.
for example, a dog is really afraid of walking forward, right? We're really afraid to walk on the sidewalk. What I might do is leash pressure forward. They sniff a little bit. Oh, good job. We can go back to going closer towards the apartment. So a good example being, you guys know Milk, right? The
Yeah. Mhm.
wolfy dog with the little legs.
Yeah, he's got a long body.
He's hilarious. He is not a big fan of treats. Like if he takes them, he's like, I don't really care for it that much. We are working on teaching him place by his reward being he gets to go sit back in one of his favorite corners, because he has particular corners in the apartment that he's like, I feel comfortable here. This is where I want to be. So we just use that leash pressure, got him over to the place. Thanks, praise. He gets on that place. We mark that, and all right, you're free to go. Go back to whatever you're doing. So I do use a lot of what we call in psychology pre-max principle. Is I know this is a thing you don't really want to do as much, but do this first, then you can do what you really want to do, which is similar
Mm-hmm.
to eat your vegetables, then you can have dessert.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And dogs are rewarded by things more than food, whether or not it's play, whether or not it's access to something, or in a lot of cases with fearful dogs, they're like, I just want to go back in my corner. And you're like, cool,
Mm-hmm.
just do this real quick, and then you can go back to that corner. But it's really about understanding when it's appropriate to push and how much you should be pushing, so that it's fair for them. Because we don't want to be losing relationship points while we're trying to teach the dog something.
Yeah, it seems like that's probably one of the hardest things to teach, is where that dog's threshold is, and when they're just had enough, like they're done and time to move on to like something else. Is that difficult to relay to the human?
Honestly, when I'm working through this, I will show the client or talk through with them, like, these are stress signals where we know, like, okay, let's not be unfair, but I also want to give them a chance to decompress after we do any kind of session like that. Like, okay, let's just go play, or here, let's just let them go out into this little grassy spot and just sniff and just calm down from that. As we're building the relationship and they do start taking any kind of treat rewards or anything like that, I mean, as you were saying, the whole shaping good behaviors, and my clients probably, they hear me say this all the time. I'm like, reward for good life choices. I was like, that's a good choice. Yay. And the more that I'm like, oh, I like when you do that. And I like when you do that, the less I have to be like, I don't like it when you do that. So the more that I'm like, this is what I'm really looking for. And I mean, dogs are going to do what works. So some behavior that they do gets them what they want, they're going to repeat that behavior. So if it's one
And
of
then
those,
eventually maybe they may not want it as much. And, that's what we're building up towards, right?
Yeah, where it's just like, it's not that big of a deal. You don't actually have to be in there. I mean, the more we were working with Milk, or his name is now Louie, after the end of the session, he wasn't immediately going back to his corner. He was kind of like, well, I guess I'll just kind of hang out here and like take a nap in the middle of the room. It just didn't
he's
seem
definitely
like that
one
big
of
a
those.
deal.
Yeah, and I love that you're not pushing him and putting so much pressure on him that he just shuts down. Like, what his threshold is, and exactly how much that you can get out of him during the time that you have with him. And that's wonderful, because it's something that it's really hard to teach, and to find trainers that put the dog first and kind of see it through their eyes. And I think there's just, a lot of sensitivity that needs to go into that. So that's really great that I know he's a tough dog. He really is.
Well, I would say when it comes to dogs who are anxious, and we get afraid of like how much pressure should we put on them. I say, put aside the whole possible mother mentality of like, oh, I don't want to like hurt my baby or anything like that. And like tap into your best friend personality. If your best friend is feeling anxious, we're going to be like, you're fine. You got this. Like, no big deal. When they accomplish something, you're like, see, you can totally do it. And it's once they realize that they can accomplish something, even if it's something super simple, like when I do the touch cue with them, it's like a simple, I realize that when I touch my nose to your hand, I get a treat. It slowly builds confidence.
Yeah, that's great. And when you get through those stages, of putting that pressure on, but then having them not be so focused on what they were fixated, making them feel safe before they're feeling more comfortable. The next step is like, what would the next step be after that? Would it be trying to engage with the dog in play? And how would you unlock that in a fearful dog?
Normally I'm trying to engage in play kind of in the middle of everything, or I like try to end a session with something that's fun and playful. Me getting dogs to play that are normally fearful, I'm honest, I learn it from watching dog savvy helper dogs. Which is like weird to say, like dog savvy helper dogs, like the ones that are really good at helping other dogs feel comfortable. That is not Tyrael. He's a little bit too intense. He's like, hey, what's going on? They're like, you're the reason why I'm afraid of dogs. You're too big. So what I normally do is, you're reading that body language. If you ever see a dog that is able to engage with another fearful dog, you kind of watch the way that they approach. They approach sideways. They're like, hey, what's going on? They're not big and looming. They might like do a couple play bows, like, you want to play? Do you want to play? And then back that pressure off. So it's not like a constant, like, hey, what's this toy? You want this toy? And just keep waving that toy in their face. You're going to go, get away from me. That's that's too much. But if you're like, hey, do you want to play a little bit? No? Okay, you're cool. What about now? You want to do that now? And I feel like a lot of helper dogs who are testing out a dog who is a little bit socially unsure do that. They come in, they're like, I just want to let you know that I'm here. I'm no threat. Do you want to play? It's fine if you don't, but it's knowing when is like too much, or like, oh, that's clearly overwhelming for the dog.
Yes.
But
yeah. And how often is it that, you get to see that transformation during a session? Does it take a couple sessions, or is it something that you get to see right away?
It depends on the dog. So I feel like some of the dogs, they are like immediate. Like, oh, hey, you smell like other dogs, and you smell like treats, and you must be a fun person. And I just kind of come in with this energy, and they're like, they want to play with me. And other times there are dogs who are like, your energy is a bit much, which I totally understand.
No, I can't see that.
I'm very animated,
Hmm.
which they're like, I don't know about that. Like, for example, and she might or might not be watching this. So, Ruby, if you guys follow Ruby on Instagram, Ruby, Brooklyn, little
That's your
fluffy
name.
thing.
It's, you guys are practically neighbors, right? You live
Right,
pretty
yeah,
close to
they
each
live
other.
like right over there.
Very cool.
She really didn't like me at first. Because I came into the apartment and I would do the whole play thing, and she was like, I don't like that. Why are you moving like that? And
Hmm.
I was like, oh no, this is the cutest dog ever. She's like afraid of me, but now she's super excited when she sees me. It was all a matter of like, okay, I'm not going to be too overly animated when I'm around you. I'm going to, tone it down. And as we build those relationship points, then I'll kind of test the waters to see if you're ready to play with me. But it did take a good portion of our training sessions before she was like, oh, wait, I love Devi.
Yeah.
And I just kind of made it my goal. I was like, you're going to be my best friend. We're not
Yeah,
ending
I mean,
these
people think
lessons
that
until
puppies
you love me.
they're going to just get out and play right away with anybody, but it takes a lot of time for them to, like you said, the relationship has to start first, on their
Absolutely.
terms. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like people, right? I mean, you can't just run up and hug someone and then you're friends immediately. Sometimes you have to have those conversations, win them
Exactly.
over a much more calmer way. So everyone's a little different.
Yeah, everyone is. And what we hear a lot of feedback from our adopters about you is, because I do like to, follow up and make sure that everybody is happy and getting what they need as far as the training goes. We're a little bit picky about our trainers, but
It's a good thing.
we
It's a good
they
thing.
all say the same thing, is that you're personable, you have a really easygoing approach, you're not intimidating, and you're just relatable as, a peer that is trying to, not pressure the adopters to be perfect in every single thing that they do when they're training their dog. And how are you able to, I mean, what is your approach, and how do you perceive the, relationship should be with the humans as well as the dogs that you're training?
I feel like when it comes to working with the clients and their dogs, I approach them pretty similarly. It's as far as I'm not going to, click them and say, oh, good choice, and throw them an M&M or anything. But at the
Give
same
them a
time,
treat.
good job, here's a Snickers. I, I honestly want to make sure that they are comfortable with handling their dog. So letting them know what I do like. I like the way that you're handling that leash, and great job catching that. The feedback is amazing. Your timing was awesome with that clicker. Um, and I think you and I were talking about that before, that it should be fun and something you look forward to seeing your trainer, not like going to the dentist, right? It shouldn't be like going to the dentist where you go to the dentist and you're like, all right, tell me everything I've been doing wrong.
Tell me, time for that root canal and scraping,
Like, I
deep
know I'm
tissue
doing
scraping.
everything wrong.
Yeah.
But I mean, I was there at one point. I didn't know how to handle a leash right off the bat. I had to learn clicker timing. I mean, I tell people it's like I've been riding a bike for over 10 years and I'm just teaching you how to ride a bike now. And if they don't feel confident with their handling, the dog's not going to progress as fast. And that's really the whole end goal, is that I want them to feel like they can train just as well as I can, so that the next time we have our session, one of the best things I love to see is that they like to show off what their dog has learned. They're like, Debbie, I can't wait to show you how well the dog's been doing over this past week. And I love hearing that, because I want them to be super motivated to continue that progress, rather than I better keep up with this stuff or Debbie's going to yell at me. I mean, that's not
Yeah.
not a
Yeah,
good way to
exactly.
learn. But that's how
Right.
it
Yeah.
should be with
Feeling that
training.
pressure.
Like,
Hmm.
I want the dog to be like, I really want to do this. I'm engaged. This is fun. This is rewarding for me. Rather than like, I'm only doing this because like I don't want to get in trouble or something like that. It's just, you get a lot more accomplished with a lot more yeses than you do with nos.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. I mean, people, I think people need to understand that it's not about like forcing your dog to do something. It's about your dog's willingness and enthusiasm to do it for you and not just go through the motions, because, that's not fun at all. And I think you have a really great way of unlocking that with our adopters, your clients. And it's really like a breath of fresh air that, you're out there actually connecting with the people and motivating them. So that, I think a lot of people need confidence building as well when it comes to training their dog.
I mean, it goes right down the leash, right? I mean, everyone's like, oh, Tyriel's a great dog. But the thing is that he does take an experienced handler, and he takes him like someone who's confident in handling the leash. Even a dog that has had all of his training, he's the same way. If you're not confident in holding that leash, he'll walk all over you. That's just how he's a big tooth, but he'll walk all over you. He's like, you don't know what you're doing. So, I mean, having that confidence when handling your dog, I mean, it definitely translates into the entire session.
Yeah. And have you always had big dogs, or, just previously, do you prefer the larger size dogs?
I do really like large dogs, but my first dog ever that I got as my own dog was a Chinese crested powder puff.
Wow.
Which, I know, how strange is that?
Yeah.
He's actually living with my sister in Boston. He's like 17 now. But he was my very first dog ever. And growing up, the first time we ever got a dog as kids was like a little Chihuahua mix, right? And I think back to like all these family dogs that we grew up with, and I'm like, oh my god, we were like torturing these poor dogs. Like she was like guarding her crate, she was growling, and we'd always be like, haha, look at her growling at us. And like I think back to it as a dog trainer, I'm like, oh my god, we knew nothing.
That was so terrible, right? Yeah. I think about that too. That's funny. Like all the family dogs we've had, and I've just been like, oh my gosh, why do we do that? Why do we encourage that?
I was the worst dog owner. Let's just
like
forget all the other dogs before then, like all the terrible things I did to them. But but I mean, it is kind of funny because as a kid, I did realize that like the small dog that I was like, oh, I guess playing around with things like agility and doing dog sports, because Tyriel does some dog sports. We used to play around with agility and like fly ball and such. But I used to, as a kid, hook up a leash to our little Chihuahua mix and set up an obstacle course around the backyard and just made her jump and go.
Oh, that's so cool.
And I'm sitting here thinking that must have been like the best time of her life, because I feel like that was the only time we gave her some real enrichment, because that wasn't anything you thought of back then. You just had a dog, you fed it, you let it out to go to the bathroom. You don't think about things like dog enrichment.
Yeah. But, as a child, you were doing that. So that must have been, like something must have triggered like, hey, I like doing this,
I think it was my obsession with horses at the time, because every little girl had an obsession with horses. Mm-hmm. And I was just like, she's like a little horse jumping all these.
Go horse, go. Jump over this. That's very
I know. Hi, Bubby.
So we had a lot of adoptions over the COVID pandemic. We still, are pretty busy. Oh, look who came to give you kisses.
It's like, I'm just going to hang out.
A head that's bigger than yours. We had a lot of adoptions over the pandemic and COVID period. And one thing that we were constantly in the back of our minds worried about was like, what's going to happen when everybody goes back to work? What's going to happen to these dogs? Are people really prepared for leaving the home and leaving their dog in the home alone? What do you think is the best way that people can start preparing for this? Because, even though it seems like, we're back in kind of the danger zone again, it's kind of like ebbs and flows. Eventually things are going to start changing. And I really don't want to get phone calls of people saying like, we have to return our dog, or, the dog isn't doing well with separation anxiety, or, I'm just not home enough for my dog.
And I mean,
those kind of issues.
The big thing is having that routine, which is something that I really love that you guys do, which is making sure that they have a routine when they come home. And I know it's like the first few days, we're not engaging with the dog. trying not to make eye contact, all that such. And, I tell everyone when they first bring those dogs home, I know that's really hard. It's super hard. You want to go, this is a brand new dog, and I just want to smother it with love. I tell them it's a perfect opportunity for you to kind of set those boundaries ahead of time. This dog is seeing you as a clean slate. They don't know what they can or cannot get out of you. Where if you set, this is how you get attention from me as you start to give them attention, they learn to go, okay, jumping up on you or crying in my crate doesn't work. It makes them go back to completely ignoring me, but they engage me when I'm independent. I am laying down and chewing on a bone or something like that, or I'm laying quietly in my crate, and trying to keep that routine as much as possible. Because even as the dog becomes house trained and they're capable of being outside of their crate and such, I always recommend you still should practice some crate time. Even if you're home, just having that time apart from you is important, even if you're not going anywhere. Because Tyrael, when we first had that shutdown, was so used to me being home, because if anything, I was doing virtual lessons. I wasn't going anywhere. So he started to just follow me around obsessively. And, if I stood up to go to the bathroom, it was like a state of emergency. He was like, where are you going? Can I go? Can I help
10
you?
feet. I'm literally going 10 feet.
Like, okay, we can't have this. So I started to send him to his bed when he started to follow me. Like, no, go to your bed. So even if I was available there for him to follow, I wanted him to still give me that space and have him learn to be independent so that he didn't become anxious when things started to change up. Like, hey, I'm going to start leaving again. Or, you're not going to be getting all of the attention in the world. So I think really coming up with that plan of like, when I start going back into work, what do I expect my dog to be doing? If they're going to be in the crate or trying to quietly lay in the background on their bed, chewing on a bully stick or what have you, that should be something that's part of your routine now. So it's not something you're trying to implement when they're already anxious about the changes.
Yeah.
When those changes are happening, they're like, oh, this is just what we do all day. We do this every day. It's not that big of a deal.
If you just like all of a sudden you're gone for 8 hours, and you come home and the dog's like, what the hell just happened today? You got to ease them into it. You have to set them up ahead of time.
I mean, take a walk without them sometimes. They're at home and you don't have to, every time you leave the house, they don't have to go with you every time. I know it's great that we can bring them places, especially when, we have those outdoor dining areas. People are bringing their dogs out for outdoor dining. It's still good for them to practice being on their own.
Yeah. And how often per day do you recommend, like, well, I know each dog is different, but should people leave their house once a day without the dog?
I would say if you can find a way to kind of make that part of the day where you just step out, even if it's just something brief, right? You like go to the post office or something, do your grocery run or, and just not make a big deal of it. When you leave, it's not a whole like, I'll see you soon. Don't you worry, I'll be back. Because the dog's like, what is going on? Why are you so worried? And then when you come back, don't make a big deal out of that. You put your keys down, you take your shoes off, you relax. If the dog's in the crate, you don't immediately try to just love up on them and get them really jazzed up. I know it's like something you love to do where you're like, oh, hi, I missed you. But we want there to be kind of that gradual, you're here and you're not here. There's not you're not here and it's totally boring and I'm not stimulated whatsoever. And then you're here and that's when I get all of the engagement and it's just so exciting. It's better to wait until they've kind of fizzled over that initial excitement of you coming home and then, oh, hi, yay, good job.
Yeah. What is it that people get that excitement going and I'm leaving and, I'm going to be back. Like the dog is understanding what they're saying, but in reality, they're creating that excitement, and the excitement for the dog is not a good thing, but maybe explain why it's not always a good thing to have that, constant roller coaster of emotions.
Well, if you think about it, that difference, if you're just picturing it from like being from the dog's point of view and you're preparing to leave, we're saying all these words to them. We might be saying some words that they understand, but I mean, we're speaking completely foreign language. So it's imagine if you're like, this is the only person I have to talk to all day, every day. And they're going, in their face. And then like, boom, the door closes and you're like, okay, well, here I am alone with my own thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
So you build up this excitement, they're escalated, and then we leave them before they get a chance to de-escalate. So
Right.
we're leaving the dog to their own devices to be able to de-escalate themselves, which a lot of the times they might, if they do have separation anxiety, take that energy and put it elsewhere. That's where you get a lot of that chewing behavior and the destructive or the crying, because they're like, I was just like stimulated and then like left with nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. So the constant, anxiety that dogs have living in apartments is something that, in the beginning, we tried to tell people, when you don't talk to your dog, then it makes the words more meaningful. It makes like your marker words or, your the things that you need to tell your dog more meaningful. And a lot of people just kind of like chatter at their dog all day. Do you find that a lot of people talk to their dog like they're human? And is it always a bad thing, really?
Well, I'll be honest with you. I chatter with my dog. I chatter with clients' dogs, but a lot of I think of why I chatter with the clients' dogs when I'm working with them is more so to kind of animate and illustrate to them watching me if I'm working with their dog. So they can better, like, I know exactly what it is that I'm doing, but it helps them kind of illustrate like what might be happening at this time. Is that dog feeling uncomfortable, or is this a good thing that the dog is doing this? So I think it just kind of helps them. It relieves their stress a little bit if I'm just kind of chit-chatting their dog.
Mm-hmm.
But I totally chit-chat my dog, but I'm also at the same time not expecting that he understands anything that I'm saying to him.
Right. Yeah, your expectations aren't like, he gets me, like he totally understood that I
doing this because he's mad at me. It's not. It's like, oh, he's doing it because he's bored, or he's doing it because he's stressed, or what have you. I mean, he understands his stop words. Tyrael knows close to like 100 different commands, right? If I were to string them together in a sentence, it might garble things up and make it a little bit confusing. But I mean, there are certain times where I'm like, yeah, there are words that I'll use that will seem like I'm just talking to him, but they're actually like a stop word or something like that, which talking on a like a dog trainer forum, we were talking about like what our stop words are. Is it just no, or what do you usually use? Like oops. And I joked about the fact that I go or excuse me, or my favorite one is rude. So those are kind of my stop words, instead of just having to be like no or what have you. So
yeah, it's like a British version of very polite and soft. Excuse me.
Pardon me, mister.
So he knows 100 commands. Wow, that's impressive.
He likes to pretend he knows none, but everyone has their days, right?
Yeah, definitely. Let's talk about a big topic that a lot of people don't like to talk about, but I like to, dig it out of people when we do talk about it. Antidepressants, medication for dogs, anti-anxiety meds. With our rescue, we don't like to put our dogs on it, but there have been occasions where dogs have needed it because of extreme anxiety and phobia and things that we're just not, able to, no matter how much we can have conditioned or, train the dog or rehabilitation, there was just certain things that they weren't able to overcome by themselves and with our help. So, how do we know which dogs? We're not vet behaviorists, but a lot of times trainers will recommend that maybe they should talk to a vet behaviorist. And how do you know when a dog might need that? And we don't want to, put them into on medication that will just turn them into a zombie, because I've seen a lot of dogs with owners that are just kind of like staring out into space and just like, okay, I'll do, I'm just sitting here just kind of zoned out. So that's I don't feel like that's the dog living their best life either. So it is a sticky subject, but um, what do you think about the meds and how they're dispensed now, and if most dogs actually need it?
It's definitely a controversial topic, to be sure. And me not being a vet behaviorist, I can't say like what medications someone should try with their dog or what have you. But when I am thinking that they should be seeking talking to a vet behaviorist, or usually we've been training this dog for an X amount of time and we've plateaued. We've done all of these different steps. We tried this or that, and the dog's kind of just stuck at this level. And they can't, like, for example, and this is like me admitting this, is Tyrael and I are on the same medication. the both of us are on fluoxetine for different reasons. So Tyrael is on fluoxetine because things with wheels make him nervous. He's gone through the training. He understands the operant skills that I've taught him, where he goes, there's a scary thing, and he turns and looks back at me. And we can get through it that way, but he's still very much on edge. Like, when's the next thing with wheels gonna come by? And when I was like, okay, I think I need to start seeking the possibility of doing medication, was because he was kind of stuck at that. He knew what to do when that trigger was around, but he couldn't recover from it. It just upset him for the rest of the day, and it made it hard for him to be able to work. He couldn't really enjoy walking outside as much because it was constant. And I feel like a lot of the dogs are out in New York City are on medication, more so than any other places I've ever trained at, because the stimuli is constant. It's always there. I'll be honest with you. I used to be very against using medications because I had a really bad experience with a shelter that I had worked with that would give medication freely to dogs so that they would show better. And then, when they got adopted out, then the medication stopped, and now you have these dogs who are just cold turkeying off of medication, and then seeing all these behavioral issues, which isn't the way that it should be. Medication, it's a huge stigma within people and within dogs, and really it shouldn't be a replacement to any kind of training. It should be something that's paired. So, if you're seeing a therapist, your trainer is your therapist, but you need a little bit of extra help, you see your veterinary behaviorist, which would be like seeing a psychiatrist who specializes in understanding what might or might not work. And just like people, if you try one medication and it doesn't work, doesn't mean something else might not. But
yeah. So there can be different variations of medication for dogs besides just like the Prozac and
the big ones are fluoxetine and trazodone are usually the ones you see, but talking to veterinary behaviors, there are so many that are out there, and it could be that they just need a combination of a couple. Trust me, as a human, I've had to play around with different medications to see what would work for me. And I think me being on fluoxetine has helped me understand what the process feels like, I think, for a dog. Like, if I get side effects or something, that I'm going to be very sluggish or what have you when I first start out, or up a dose or something like that. And then I feel normal. And then there's
Tyrael certainly doesn't act like a zombie.
Yeah.
He's behind you, like, tail wagging.
What's going on? How you guys doing? Yeah, people are like, he's how old? Because he has a lot of energy. But yeah, if it was a medication that I had him on and he, wasn't acting his normal goofy self, then that would be something that I would think of either taking him off of or trying something different. Because it should be about assisting with the training plan and not as a replacement. For sure.
Yeah, I think that's great that you can relate to your dog being on medication because you know what it feels like, and sharing something like that is really powerful for people because like you said, a lot of dogs in New York City are on medication. Now, how many of them should actually be on medication, and how many people should actually try training their dogs too, maybe first?
Yeah, I think it's definitely like if you've tried the training, and like I said, we've done the training and the dog seems like they improve, but they just get stuck, is the time that you might want to really look into that. The only times that I've been like, okay, before we start our training plan, maybe think of talking to a vet behaviorist so that we can start them together is if I see an extreme behavior, something that is very abnormal, not something that's like a normal fear. It's just something that, I mean, it's just like with people and like with other dogs, when we think that like, oh, it's all a behavior thing that we can train out, but sometimes it's genetics. Like I'm a good example of that, right? I'm generally a happy, bubbly person. My brain just doesn't create certain chemicals that I need to really kind of focus and function the same way that somebody else might, just like why people take insulin or high blood pressure medication. Sometimes there's just something that the dog just needs that assistance to be able to help them process a little better.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really cool. Thanks for sharing that. Besides, having a lot of energy that you have, you seem to direct that towards another hobby and activity.
Yeah.
Your plant, and I won't call it an addiction. I'll call it a collection.
It's hoarding. It's hoarding. That's what it is. But I think a lot of people during the pandemic are kind of on the same boat right now with a lot of plants.
Yeah. I think it's fantastic that you have, a passion besides dog training, and, it just gives you sort of a balance to your life, especially in these crazy times that we live in. How many plants do you own? And I think you once told me that you could see the plants crawling up the walls from the street, the window.
Yeah, well, that I know when one needs watering from the street. So like I live on a busy street corner, and like sometimes I'll see like one of my plants in the windows before I cross the street. Hey, go lay down, please. Go lay down. He's like, I need to be a part of this. Go lay down. There you go. Where I'm like crossing the street, I'm like, my ivy needs watering, like from across the street. So you kind of get the feel of it, and then you're like, I feel like that's all I'm doing. Like I can't even sit down and watch the show without looking at my plants and going, maybe I should repot you or something. But I kind of lost count. But the last time I counted, I was over 200. Before the pandemic, wow. I was at about 70, and I was just finding them around the city, just plant hunting in the city. And then like when the pandemic hit and then we were all locked inside, I discovered ordering plants online, and then it just kind of like went downhill from there. But wow. I made a lot of really great plant friends, which is awesome. So, I mean, the plant community in itself is kind of like dog community, you get tight knit.
I was just going to say, like, do all your plants have names, and do you remember them all?
No, I call them by their scientific name. Literally only one of my plants has a name, and it's Donnie, and it's my Boston fern, Donnie Wahlberg.
Yeah. Did we throw up pictures of the plants for everybody? She's got a few pictures. Devi has a few pictures of her plant collection, which is beautiful. And I heard you might be getting rid of some, so that might be heartbreaking. That might be heartbreaking for you.
I feel like every time I try to get rid of some of them, I buy like 5 more. So it really kind of how it goes.
Yeah. One step forward, a couple steps back. So Devi, would you mind taking some questions, because we have a ton of people that sent in some great questions.
Yeah, let's do it.
And I'm going to hit you with the Q&A. Callie and Ollie asks, is it weird that my dog seems to be afraid of the dark, especially after a trip to rural upstate? And we kind of touched on that in the beginning, right?
Oh yeah, that difference between going, from someplace that's quiet to someplace that is, crazy busy. But I mean, if you think dogs' eyesight is not as well as we think it is. So it's not unusual for a dog to be afraid of the dark. You go out there, you don't see things as clearly. You hear all those noises. They're going to be a little bit more on edge, which is why like certain things, when people wear masks or big hoods or something, that makes it hard to be able to read a person or be able to tell who's under there. It can be just as scary. So when you're in the dark, we're kind of taking away that ability to be able to see as well. So yeah, no, it's definitely not weird. I see it a lot. Where there are times I have to schedule sessions where the sun has gone down so we can work on walking outside.
Oh yeah. I mean, even now with the winter time, and it gets dark so fast. So I'm sure that your schedule has to be rearranged. I know for us, we don't like sending dogs home at night. we want to adopt dogs early in the day, so they have that day to kind of like, see everything that's going on and just get more comfortable throughout the day. Hey, for those viewers, we are going to probably be off of Instagram in a couple minutes because it only gives us an hour live. So head on over to Facebook and our YouTube channel, because we're going to go through some of these questions that you guys submitted, and keep sending the questions in because they're really great. Devi, the dog trainer, is here with us, and we got a question from Amy Cowan. How do we get the dog to look at us and not treats during training? Oh, that's a good question.
That's where your clicker or your marker word comes in handy, right? If you feel like that your dog's just looking at your hands, then what I normally do is if I'm waiting to reward them, I might wait for that eye contact, right? So like the times that, and with some of the dogs that I'm practicing, even just like name recognition, I say their name and they look at me. Sometimes they might look towards my hand. I just wait. I wait it out. And normally that like eye contact slowly comes up where they're like, excuse me, what's happening? And then like click, then reward. But there should always be kind of that pause between the marker, that click, and then the actual treat reward. So we're not immediately going like the food needs to happen fast. But
how about they stare at the pouch too? Sometimes they stare at like the treat pouch, and
I've literally taken out the treat pouch and like set it aside before. Like if you're like, if they're only paying attention when your treat pouch or your clicker is on, like sometimes I'll move to a marker word if they're only listening when a clicker is present. Or I'll take my treat pouch off and like set it aside or something like that. So that way, they do something I'm asking for them. I'm like, yes. Then I can go over, get the reward. There you go. Now you're getting it. So it's, it has to be, it's coming for me. It's not that. Don't pay attention to what's going on over there.
The inanimate object over there. Yeah. And once again, guys, head on over to Facebook or YouTube Live right now, because we are going to be going off Instagram. They cut us off after an hour, but we'll still be taking some questions. Amy Jacobs asks, when you bring your adopted dog home for the first time, what are the most important things to focus on, like the first day or two? Would one of them be how to introduce them to their new home and family?
I know
that's all her question.
Yeah, I know with you guys, we try to keep it as simple as possible. We're trying to minimize how much stimuli they're getting. I know for us, we always, as people, we're like, let's have a welcome home party. But for the dog, there's a lot of changes. So I normally want to make sure that I know where the dog's going to be sleeping at night, get them on a really good schedule. So you're like, when is feeding time? When is walking time? If it's a younger dog, you can start kind of keeping track of that schedule. So it can help you figure out what a good potty schedule will end up being like as well. So if you're pottying, if you're feeding them at certain times and you realize, hey, they potty around this time, even if it's an accident, you mark it down. So it gives you a good idea of when they have to go. But I try to keep their world kind of small in the beginning, finding their potty spot. You walk them outside. This is where you potty. This is a small route that we'll take, and then we'll just slowly branch out from there. So that way they can just kind of process all these changes little by little. We're not throwing too much at them.
Right. Yeah. It's definitely too much, too fast, too soon. Those are the biggest mistakes. I don't know if this is T-Rex plants or Trex plants. Anyway, what tips do you have for getting a dog used to moving to a city like New York, especially if you're moving from a more rural or suburban area?
One of the things I send to new adopters, and that's my friend Jen. Hi, Jen. You're like T-Rex plants? What I normally do with new adopters, and one of the new adopter sheets that I send them, is playing like a YouTube link of city noises, pairing it with something of high value. Like here's a Kong or a licky mat or a snuffle mat or something like that they can work on that is of high value while I play these noises, starting out with a lower volume and slowly increasing it. So that way the sounds of the city isn't something that's completely abnormal to them.
Do you have any recommendations on the any sounds that they can use, like where to get them?
Yeah, you can literally look up anything on YouTube when it comes to dog socialization, and I bet you they have a video of the sounds.
Mhm.
I can always send you a link later as far as what the city noise ones that I use. It's like an hour long of like construction and beeping and all that kind of
Oh,
stuff.
wow. That
But
would be
even
a
a
good
dog
one.
already living to the city, it's actually really good for them to listen to, because some of the apartments are very, very quiet. And then when you go out into the street, from your high rise, that difference between quiet apartment to loud city streets can be jolting, which I don't even know if you guys can hear back here
I just
behind
heard
me.
that. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's, yeah, that's a good
constant for
one. Good
me.
example. Shannon asks, my dog is a bit rowdy at the dog park and gets aggressive. What do I do?
I always, the first thing when it comes to bringing the dog to the dog park, I mean, it's hard to say when we say like aggressive. Are we meaning that the dog is playing too rough, or is it just really doesn't like hanging around dogs? I always ask people when they bring their dogs to the dog parks, are we bringing the dogs to the dog parks for the dog's sake, or because we want to take the dogs to the dog park?
By the way, can I just ask, do you take Tyrael to the dog park yourself?
I do not. So
Okay.
dog parks, my personal opinion, dog parks make me very nervous. Um, I have run large dog groups before where, you're in control of like all of these dogs, but I'm in control of those dogs. When I go to a dog park, I'm hoping that everyone else has control over their dogs. Because the idea when it comes to going to dog parks or daycare, something like that, it should be for social dogs, not for socializing. So if we have a dog who is feeling fearful or unsure of how to play, taking him to the dog park isn't really going to fix that, right? It could start a fight, or you could have a dog who's more fearful is now even more afraid because somebody else brought another dog that was coming on too hard.
Mhm.
With Tyrael, he's a very vocal player, and it scares owners, it scares other dogs. Even if it's, and it just tends to trigger other dogs too, that high energy of like, when he's playing, it's just other dogs see him and they're like, get him. Like, I'm going to get
Wow.
that guy.
Yeah.
So I don't even put him in that situation. Um, he can play with other dogs,
Hmm.
but as far as like a large group, it's not something that's for him, and that's okay. A lot of the times people think like my dog can't go to daycare or go to the dog park. What is wrong with my dog? And there's nothing wrong with your dog. It's like us, right? I mean, some of us like going to big parties, and some of us rather just hang out with a book at home or
Stay
something like
home and read a
that. And
book. Yeah.
yeah, and that
Or as
changes as we mature.
the pandemic has started, everybody's doing that anyway. So
Yeah, nobody knows
not
how
so
to
bad.
interact with people anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the dogs, the dogs in dog parks have been always been a big issue for us, and we ask people, please wait 30 days before you throw your dog into the mosh pit, as Jason Cohen calls it. The doggy mosh pit. And it's and if you're gonna go like early in the morning or later in the evening when there's not so many dogs there. But you're right. A good way. What I like that you said, is it for you as a human, or is it for the dog? Which one?
I mean,
uh,
there's a higher percentage of dogs that are selective than ones that do well with all the dogs they meet. I mean, it's just normal, right?
mhm. Yeah, absolutely. John Lennon. John Lennon. Wow. Okay.
The John Lennon?
The John Lennon asks, how can I bring dogs back from Korea when I go visit there? Okay, well that's not really a training question, but if you want to volunteer for us, you can email us at f as in Frank, v as in volunteer. I'll actually say f as in flight, v as in volunteer, fv@koreancaninerescue.org, and we would love to have you as a flight volunteer because we desperately need them.
Oh, there you go.
Um, Amy Cowan asks, when walking the dog in the city, if we pass another dog that doesn't want to interact with us, what is the appropriate thing to do?
I just keep walking. Like, okay, we're not going to say hello. I mean, honestly, when I do greetings with dogs, which is it's very rare when I do greetings with other dogs on leash anyhow, unless it's like a very specific type of dog that I know Tyrael's going to be like totally fine with, like usually loose, wiggly piggly dogs that I'm like, oh yeah, they'll be fine. But I normally want there to be structure in that greeting anyhow, right? Like a sit, wait, wait to be released, then go say hello versus the say hello to every single dog in passing. Because if you allow your dog to just go ahead and say hello to every dog that goes by, you're going to get just like a lot of this when you're walking, right? You're like, oh my God, can we just go anywhere without my dog having to say hello to everybody? That it's okay to just be like, nope, let's go. Let's keep on going. We're just going to keep on walking. And then you can, treat and reward for being able to walk by that dog without having to say hello. So it's not a punishment to not say hello. We can reward them for going, yes, thank you for keeping track with me. I like that.
Yeah. It's like, how do you even get down the block when there's 10 dogs, on the same block walking towards you? It can be kind of a challenge to navigate through that. Hanson Joy from Facebook asks, how do you gauge the fairness bar? Fairness is in quotes, when doing the Premix method.
Oh, Premix.
Yeah. When you observe, this is like a very technical question. Good stuff. When you observe the soothing behaviors in them. So he said, how do you gauge the fairness bar method when you do the Premix method, when you observe the soothing behaviors in them?
So like, for example, if I'm going, hey, the sooner you walk with me, the sooner you sniff, the sooner we can walk in this direction that you want to go in. I'm obviously not going to stop in a spot that is like a busy street corner. So if the dog is over the top, and especially out in the city, you kind of get a gauge for the areas where you're like, we're not going to stop here because that's a lot. If you're like, there's like all sorts of stuff happening. But if you're like off to the side, I normally look for, because normally dogs, they might go like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do with myself, and I'll kind of wait them out a little bit. Even if they're not taking treats, sometimes I sprinkle treats on the ground just to like, hey, there's smells on the ground now. But normally I'm gauging of like, what is the stress signals that they're giving? Like if they're like heavily panting and shaking, that's not obviously fair. I'm like, well, okay, this dog is way flooded right now. But if they just seem kind of stuck in that, I don't know what I should be doing with myself right now, I'm patient and I wait. And I just patiently wait. And then as soon as even if they just put their nose to the ground for a second, like, I'm just going to stop and sniff. I'm like, yeah, all right, let's keep moving. That's all I was looking for. And then every time it gets a little bit more that they're offering, because they're like, okay, well, I noticed when I put my head to the ground, we get to keep moving. And then I realized this actually helps me feel a little bit better when I stop and sniff the ground. But it's really reading the dog that's in front of you. If the dog seems like they're completely overwhelmed, then obviously trying another spot, right? I mean, when it comes to that, you might have to be like, we're going to practice this in like a lobby versus outside, or like on your balcony versus like out on the street.
And Hanson, I'm not sure if you're talking about like, it's one of those nuanced things that a trainer like Devi can spot right away, but it's harder for somebody that, is just starting, just has a new dog. They don't see those things right away. But eventually, I think that when you look for those little small things, then, you're able to pick up on them faster. Avis Abia asks, how do you create a safe space or show your dog their new home is a safe space? Do you recommend making the space smaller, like closing off certain rooms or areas, or is it more hands-off?
I normally try to, because I know you guys will suggest having the crate in the bedroom a lot of the times, and it is good to have kind of.
Yeah, actually, I always meant to ask you, what do you prefer, the crate in the bedroom or the living room?
I always say it depends on the dog.
Okay.
So the ones that have a tendency to get upset when seeing people walk back and forth, because there's a lot of foot traffic in the living room, then the bedroom is a better place to put them. Okay. Especially if you have a dog who's more likely to show separation anxiety. I know it seems like it's kind of counterproductive to put them like even slightly more separated, but we can create a lot more frustration if they're like, excuse me, you keep walking by me and you're not paying attention to me. That it can just make it harder for them to learn to settle. But I like the idea of using the bedroom, because it gives you that opportunity that if you're working on something like separation anxiety, you know, you can kind of step out of the room when they start crying and then pop back in if they're like being quiet. You're like, okay, hi, here I am again. So you're not doing that accidental, like, oh, I just looked at them and now they're screaming at me and even more. But yeah. I like using the bedroom. It's set off as the dog is getting used to everything. You're kind of away from heavy foot traffic. I mean, having their bed there, something to chew on, something to be able to relax in, and just kind of like routine wise, a good place to be able to just start with listening to everything that's going around in the household. Mm-hmm. And then, you know, as they get better, you could move it to the living room where you're like, okay, now you're where the foot traffic is, you can get a little bit more used to it. But in the beginning, I think keeping the world small and a little bit more quiet is better for them rather than jumping in deep end. I mean, they already have to deal with everything outside, right?
Right. Yeah. Clementine, speaking about the crate, Clementine asks on Instagram, can you talk about the pros and cons of crate training?
The crate is extremely useful in dog training. You get a puppy, you get a brand new dog. It's kind of setting up good management. So it shouldn't be something that we are like going to punish them to do, right? Like we're going to put you in here and leave you in here for the whole day. A lot of people tend to ask me like how much is too much in the crate. And I always use the example that Tyrael is crate trained. And when I used to work out of a facility where I could bring him, he was in a crate for most of the day. But in between those times, he was getting enrichment. He was getting exercise in between that. So then when he went to his crate, he was asleep. He was like, all right, ready to nap. I'm ready to relax. So as long as you are giving your dog the right exercise and right outlet, it's okay to use the crate. Where it becomes unfair is if we're using the crate because we don't want to have to manage our dogs when they're out. If that makes sense. Yeah. We're like, I don't feel like watching you. You're driving me crazy. I'm going to put you in a crate. And now we have a very frustrated dog who's like, I hate the crate because it keeps me from being able to relieve any kind of energy.
But being a dog, just wanting to do dog things. Speaking of exercise and enrichment, does he like the cold? And does he when it gets cold out, do you do the same amount of exercise or do you do other things?
He's funny because like he likes the cold for like a little bit. Like if there's snow, he's like, this is great. And then he's, oh, it's cold. Oh, my feet. And he's a big drama queen when it comes to me putting like a coat on him because he does have like this cute little Kurgo coat. But if I put anything on him as far as like a coat goes, like he like tucks his tail and he's like, why are you doing this to me? I'm like, I'm trying to keep you warm. And he does the same thing if I have like a cooling vest on him. He's like, this is animal abuse. Someone call PETA. So it's... So he doesn't
and you're like, it's for your own good.
I'm doing this for you. But he, as far as going out in the cold, I mean, when they start laying down the salt, yeah, I try to be more careful about like taking longer walks if I don't have any protectant on their paws. But you know, you can get those booties for them, or you can get the musher wax to protect their feet from anything like that. But we also do, and then, you know, some people might have checked out my Instagram page where I do have some videos where I am exercising and giving Tyrael some enrichment. That doesn't necessarily involve just going for a walk. It's also like playing tug, or when I'm teaching him some of his dog parkour stuff. He loves dog parkour, and I like teaching my clients dog parkour, where, you know, even if we just go out to a park and just hop up on different rocks and stuff like that, it's adding more enrichment than just going for a long walk and not really actually engaging in anything.
Yeah. And Callie and Ollie on Instagram, they said, what are some advanced ways to continue building confidence for a medium fearful dog? And I think that might be one of them is that parkour that you're talking about, right?
Doggy parkour.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of fun too. I mean, obviously we don't have, the unfortunate thing with a lot of the places that offer agility and such, you know, aren't open right now during the pandemic, but teaching that urban dog parkour, even if it's just like I'm going to teach my dog to hop up onto this rock or something like that. that is something that's a huge confidence booster for them, just starting with something small and then building up from there. And I have a couple of videos of like dogs that are doing that, where they're, once they really get into it, they stop thinking about stuff in the environment that freaks them out. But I mean, there's just, dog parkour is kind of your way of doing agility when you don't have access to an agility course, because agility is a really fantastic way to build confidence doing those different dog sports, but not everybody has an agility course. And certainly in New York City, we can't really fit them in our apartment. I got rid of like all of my equipment to, my friends were excited about it when I moved, but I had to get rid of all of mine.
Yeah. That's going to be a pretty common thing as it gets colder out. People are going to be doing less and less with their dogs. Is there any activities that you suggest inside the home that could help them?
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of like doing different puzzle games, or even just teaching little things like 2 paws up onto something or back paws up onto something. In one of the videos when I was teaching back paws up, I actually have a video of me having Tyrael go up the stairs backwards.
Oh, that's impressive.
So he's really awkward when he does it. He's like, where are my back feet? Where are they? But it's teaching body awareness, and it really works both his mind and his body. And being a Rottweiler and being prone to having joint and hip issues and such, that's so important for me to do that, those kind of little exercises to help him just condition his body a little bit better. But even simple things like that, just like, I'm going to teach my dog to step backwards.
I mean, I don't even think I could do that backwards with my legs. So
fall. He's better than I am at it.
Well, there are a few more questions, but unfortunately, we run out of time. And if you want to hit Devi up with those questions, is that okay, Devi? Instagram. Your Instagram is Devi. Is it Devi dot the dog trainer, or
Devi dot dog trainer?
Okay. Feel free to hit her up on Instagram with those questions, and also check out her website, devithedogtrainer.com. Devi, it's been a pleasure and really great talking.
A lot of fun
catching up with you, and I hope we can do this again.
For sure.
So yeah, have a great day, everybody, and thanks again for joining us. Bye. Take care.
Thanks for tuning in.